I'm Sari Kimbell, and I've done just about everything in the food industry. I have helped hundreds of packaged food business entrepreneurs, and now I want to help you make your delicious dream a reality. Whether you want to be successful at farmers markets, online, or wholesale onto store shelves, food business success is your secret ingredient. I will show you how to avoid an expensive hobby and instead run a profitable food business. Now let's jump in. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. So good to have you here. And this topic, I know that this episode is going to get a lot of downloads because the few YouTube videos I have put out there on co-packing have gotten a ton of downloads. So this episode is definitely going to be a keeper if you're going into manufacturing or working with a co-packer. So I'm excited to welcome my guest today, Andrea Blau, and she is the owner of AVA Manufacturing. And Andrea has over 20 years in the food service CPG industry, which you don't look that old. I question 20 years, but she has spent time extensively in supply chain quality and operations. And she did not put very much in her bio, but I'm going to just say that she is a pleasure to work with and she knows her stuff and she's just kind of a badass. So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really excited to have you on this episode. You and I have been working together on a number of projects together, and you're here in my area in Denver. And I'm so grateful that you are here because you have helped my life be easier and my clients' lives. And so we're very grateful to you and that you started AVA. Can you just tell us a little bit about why you started AVA, which isn't that old? It's a young manufacturing company.
Yeah, it is. AVA is only just turned 1 year old recently, but I started AVA really with one idea in mind. And that was to make sure that the question of what do I do if people tell me I don't have enough volume could be solved. I think that I've watched this industry and a lot of success stories happen in the past of my career to know that everyone deserves their shot and that we're not going to grow and expand the better for you categories without getting those brand owners out of the test kitchens and out of the commissaries so that they can really focus on how to sell and market their product and kind of stay in that lane and let those of us who know and understand the importance of quality and consumer safety take our reins. That to be said, as long as I've spent my career in co-packing, it's been more about, unless it's 5,000 pounds, 10,000 pounds, 20,000 pounds, we don't want the project. And there needed to be a solution. There needed to be a co-packer out there that wanted to help make sure there was a place where everyone felt like an equal sized fish instead of being a little fish in a big pond.
Yeah. I love that you created AVA. I was at your 1 year party and there was such a great story behind it with you and your siblings and your whole family was there. It was so fun. And we're going to get into the specifics in general about co-packing, but I just want to say the business you have created is really special and your employees and the way you value your employees is really something unique. So
yeah, thank you.
You really value your employees.
Definitely. I really do. And I think that, I am not just the person that says I'm the bottom of the organization. I really do keep my team members and my staff above me because I think that at the end of the day, they're really the ones out there doing the hard work. It is hard work to be a small business owner. It's hard work to run a company, but it's still nothing by comparison to what they do every day.
Yeah. Oh man. So thank you for doing that. And just so you guys know, AVA is a dedicated gluten-free facility and a peanut-free facility, but they take clients from all over the country as long as you meet those qualifications. And I highly recommend calling Andrea up and seeing if it's a good fit. But let's just talk about co-packing kind of in general, anywhere people
Yeah.
are at. And I do love that you're trying to bring it down to work with smaller producers. I know I've had a number of clients who've transitioned over to working with you, which is super fun to see that. But when is the right time for a manufacturer, somebody who's making their own product, either cottage food or they're in a commissary kitchen? When's the right time to start looking at a co-packer?
I think the right time, in my opinion, is really based on who you're reaching. And what I mean by that is farmers markets are kind of that fun and safe space where you have an expectation of that homegrown feel. And I think that's completely appropriate for brands that are introducing themselves into a community or even a state. But I think beyond that, when you are having that opportunity to talk to someone in the retail world and or going to put even products up on Amazon, your own Shopify, that's the right time to engage a co-packer and or even a consulting group to help you understand whether it's your time. When liability grows for yourself and your company is the right time to make sure you have the appropriate team and you can make those transitions from not only the most efficient from cost, but efficient from avoiding some of those mistakes, making labeling errors, making oopsies, we cross-contaminated something. Now we have to throw away all this product because I'm in a shared space. I think anytime you're branding and retailing, anything with a UPC, really, you need to be speaking with a manufacturer.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, I know I have people who want to hang on to that manufacturing piece because that's kind of their thing that they love. But when you start really scaling up, there's so many liability pieces. And we just had Lauren, who's an attorney, on talking to us about trademarking and some of those FDA pieces as well. But I mean, you as a co-packer handle so much of that food safety piece that often gets overlooked, unfortunately. And the label, I know you offer feedback on labels at least, and whether people take them or not is their choice. But yeah, when you start going in grocery stores and that kind of thing, it's really an Amazon and growing your business. I think that's great. And it can also just help you with your scale, right? And getting your cost of goods sold down so that you can compete on a grocery store shelf. I think that's actually a big myth is that I have a lot of people come to me and say it's going to be more expensive to work with a co-packer. And I said, no, actually, that's not the case. It's more upfront because you're buying more pieces, but the price per unit, I mean, I've only ever seen it go down. So it's pretty hard.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I think that, myself included, probably at some point in time, yourself included, small business, small brands, they don't really always take into account the value of their own time and what they're really worth to the company. Unless you can actually write yourself a paycheck out of it, it's hard to capture that. But again, it's not co-packing versus the rent of a commissary kitchen for 1 hour. It's the time and effort and the sweat equity that you're putting in there too does carry a value.
Yeah, 100%. And so a lot of times, the first thing that happens, especially if they're on their own, they start calling around, like they Google, people always ask me like, how do I find co-packers? And it's like, there's not one great resource to my knowledge. I've pieced together a number of different online databases and sources into my program, but how do people normally find you? Is it just through Googling around?
Most of my clients are referral based, and I happen to just be very fortunate in that way. That being said, I think there's a lot to be said about people's own network. So you refer me a lot of business, which I'm grateful for. But beyond that, there's a power in someone calling me, like you mentioned, I'm gluten-free, I'm peanut-free. it's okay if someone still calls AVA. I'm going to probably help them find the right co-packer if I can't exactly match their profile. So, I wouldn't encourage brands to cut themselves short on who they call initially. When you find the right companies, they're going to be willing to help you. Just be out in the industry, even if it doesn't end up being their business.
Yeah. And a lot of times then I get the feedback of like, well, I called all these places. They're not getting back to me. Do I keep hounding them? Do I keep going after them? Or they get back to me and like their minimums are giant, It's like you said, like 5,000 pounds or 10,000 bars at a time. Any suggestions, or do you encourage people to just keep trying, keep
I encourage people to basically, I would never encourage someone who's going from farmer's market to natural grocers, maybe called me and said they want to look at my product. I wouldn't encourage them to, call the biggest co-manufacturer in the United States. That's clearly not appropriate and would be a waste of their time. But if you, again, stay within your own network, find other companies that are about your size. They're likely to connect you with someone. Again, if it's not a right fit, they'll connect you with someone else. But, to advocate for the brands, if you call a co-packer or email and the first question out of their mouth is, what is your volume? I wouldn't spend time talking to them because that's not going to be a fit partner, in my opinion. It's a very evident tell of a company who is only interested in themselves, their bottom line, before they're interested in your product and your growth strategy.
Yeah. Which is such a great segue into creating a great relationship with a co-packer. I mean, I could liken this to a marriage in some ways.
Yeah,
that you definitely are becoming very intertwined with your co-packer. So what are some tips about creating a great relationship that you found?
Yeah, I think that there's value in trust, and it's difficult, just like at the beginning of any relationship, to have that foundation. It's never difficult, though, to be able to tell if you're going to be able to build it. And I would say that goes for me in the co-packing side. It goes for the brands. It's to your point, it's a lot like not just a marriage, but that initial dating period, I would say, is kind of when you start vetting co-packers. It's really more about, is this someone that I really can trust? That should really be top of mind, beyond the price, beyond the can I meet a volume commitment. If it seems like an organization that's trustworthy, and not just because they may have a name or may have been referred, you have to get that gut feeling from your initial conversations with them.
Yeah, good. It really is about the trust and understanding that it needs to be a win-win too, right? Like it. I know you've pushed back sometimes with me. I'll send you an NDA and you're like, nope, this needs to be mutually beneficial. Or, I mean, you've taught me so much, and I appreciate you're just like, you just tell me how it is, and then I go figure it out. But understanding that, the co-packer needs to make money in this, and you as a manufacturer, it needs to be a win-win. And so going into it that way, I think is a great, especially from the client end. And that not all co-packers are just greedy, trying to take all your money.
One of the things I hear a lot is that brands have to have a certain amount of money for marketing spend, or for promotions, for advertising, things of that nature. And that's very, very important to a lot of companies. I would also say that you have to understand where you're putting your money. So if you're going to go with just the flatline cheapest co-packing you can find, you're probably not going to be happy with the quality of your product, and all that marketing funding will have gone for nothing anyway. I would encourage people to look at their budgets, really take a look at what their spend on quality is versus their spend on marketing.
Yeah. Because you want people will keep coming back if the quality is there versus that one time. And then you got to keep spending a lot of money to go get new customers. Yeah. So tough situations come up in co-packing all the time. Now we're dealing with much larger batches. Well, I guess actually let's back up and talk first of like, what can people expect on the like onboarding process? I think you do a
Mhm.
great job with this, but kind of, they've dealt with like, okay, your minimum order quantities. We kind of got some of that initial stuff out of the way, but what can I expect next?
I think that the first thing that should be agreed upon, maybe beyond an NDA before any legal documents are signed, is at minimum a benchtop sample. It may be even a half size of what the commercialized batch will look like, but it's really more about presenting product that's fit for the co-packer's equipment and deciding whether you're okay signing off on that as the brand. Then I would go on to essentially a pilot run, not to be confused with production. We can hope that pilot runs turn out to be sellable product, but maybe the sellable product goes to a smaller marketplace or out to family and friends for some feedback and things, because you have to not just love it yourself, your standard consumer base, and a lot of small companies utilize their family and friends for that, need to take a look at it too. All those things should really be in the works before we are talking about contracts and things of that nature, because you can't take it back, unfortunately, if you just go first production right off the bat, and cross your fingers for sellable goods to a store. So that's kind of the other thing through the onboarding process. Some co-packers will, some co-packers won't offer their opinion on labeling. And depending on your product, it may be absolutely necessary. For example, if you had a USDA product, the co-packer obviously carries that liability a lot more under a USDA plant than just a standard FDA plant. So label review should be done. That's mutually beneficial to everyone. It is not ever the case that I would say to a company, unless there was a food safety issue with the label, a misdeclared allergen, something of that nature, that I would force their hand at changing it before they could ever come here. But it's a good idea to make sure that you've had multiple and at least one legal set of eyes on those types of things. That should all be kind of the grace period, the onboarding process. As much as you can. If you're local to the co-packer you're looking at, I would, again, ask them if you can participate in these things. I know the last year has definitely been different for everyone, but backing all of the past 15 months out, I would say that's also another tell of who the co-packer is going to be and what kind of partner they're going to be. If they will not let you in their doors, that should be a red flag for you, whether it's just minimally for a tour, or participation in a benchtop or a pilot production. We are out there, those of us that will allow that. That to be said, if those doors are open for you, be respectful of their rules and their standards in the facility. Things like taking pictures and what to wear. Ask those questions of them if they're going to let you into the facility first.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great tips. And I know you've been very generous letting me come in and doing lots of test runs. And we should reiterate that they are test runs and they don't always work out the first time.
That's right.
And, side note, chocolate chips, thumbs up. We're happy.
Good. Good.
Chocolate chip cookies. So, after several attempts. So, and some co-packers do charge for those test runs. So just be aware of that there may be a test run, that benchtop sample run fee, where we're just making sure the equipment works and like it's all going to work with that co-packer and their ingredients.
Yes.
And then do co-packers in general kind of generally help source ingredients, or have you seen it go a lot of different ways?
I've seen the models go different ways. I think that a couple years ago, there was a book that got published on Amazon about co-packing, and I bought it and immediately threw it away because I was so upset with it. It was so ridiculous. But the one thing that was stable about it was there are three types of co-packing, really. There's the full A to Z, the turnkey solution, where your expectation is the co-packer does all of it. There's the tolling model where you as a company want to be organizing your own supply chain and planning, your own production, so on and so forth. And all you're doing is basically outsourcing the labor to a co-packer. And then there's kind of the hybrid where you may have a tolling agreement with your co-packer, but from a commodity standpoint, it makes the most sense for them to be buying certain things because of their volume abilities. And there's an in-between there that a lot of people, if they ask, can find.
And then sometimes co-packers like yourself have some extra add-on services. And I love that you guys offer the kind of the 3PL model where you're able to ship using someone's Shopify account. So I haven't seen that very much though. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know that many co-packers out there are doing it. I know one of the reasons I am doing it is because I've worked with and for a couple companies that refuse to do it. But at the end of the day, me as a co-packer, I'm doing a full analysis on how successful my brands can be. And it's not beyond my time, of course, with an affiliated cost to say, instead of paying freight from my facility to a 3PL, and the 3PL wants a storage fee, a break case fee, a shipping fee, a label fee, for probably, traditionally what brands could pay at a 3PL, marginally at AVA. And hopefully more co-packers will be open to that option in the future because it is appropriate, again, at a small brand, a small base to help your companies along so that if they grow and have the cost to sink back into some of those other important pieces, then we all win in the end. That to be said, I have a tremendous amount of respect for 3PLs and several colleagues out there that run them. Those are absolutely appropriate when you are, shipping hundreds and hundreds of Shopify or Amazon or whatever the case may be orders a day. They are also a very necessary piece of our business and the supply chain. It's tough for some of the smaller brands to find that accommodation.
Yeah, so good. All right, so let's talk about the tough situations come up. I as the brand, we've done the pilot run, we've done the benchtop. We signed a contract, and it's like I basically said, okay, here's you have all the things, and then you as the co-packer are going to, you organize it with your staff. I don't even know how you do all of that. That's amazing. Especially because AVA does a lot of different products, right? I mean, everything from baking to we're doing butters to, you just sauces, like you have a lot of different capabilities. Some co-packers are very much just like, we only do sauces or we only do baked goods. But in any case, you organize it all. You have the process and the plan. And then there's a QA issue, right? A quality assurance issue or something that the client doesn't like. Like how do we go about navigating that? What's the best way to handle that as the brand?
Sure. I think that it depends on a couple of things. And step one of that process is taking a look at it and understanding between yourself and the co-packer what the problem actually is. And what I mean by that is there could be a food safety issue, which is and should be a hard stop for most people, that it needs to be addressed as such. Then there's a very different quality issue. An example of that would be maybe the shape of something isn't necessarily what we like, but at the same time, that's not a food safety risk. The shape of now, if you wanted a circular cookie and you ended up with a square, then sure, your co-packer made a mistake. But is it unsafe? Is it inedible? Should it go to waste? Probably not. And we should talk through what the right step is of how much of it we're really willing to release and how much of it we could potentially donate if that's what needs to happen. And or, which is actually the problem I hear of most, it is not a quality problem at all. It is an opinion, meaning it may be the fact that it's a little bit too sweet is not something you want to say to a co-packer when there's only a certain amount of sugar and sweeteners that go into formulas, and they've likely been signed off on. At that point, if a co-packer can go to their batch records and say, no, this is what I made, this is what you had asked me to make, telling someone that it's a little bit too dry or a little bit too sweet isn't really even a conversation. And that kind of brings me to another point that I really try to encourage small brands to understand. You have to be at the point in order to join a co-packing organization where you are not making family recipes anymore. And that's hard for people to hear, because that's, for a lot of us, a passion point. And we want it to be just the way your mom or your grandma or your grandpa, exactly how they did it is not how it's going to come out of a co-packing facility.
Right.
It's going to be a very, very kind nod to where those recipes probably originally came from. But that at that point is an opinion. If I can't, as a co-packer, validate a quality or a food safety problem, then I'm going to ask you to go home and sleep on it, and call me back maybe when some of the emotion has left the conversation.
Yeah.
But outside of that, if it's a food safety issue, that's going to be qualified as an issue that either a raw material or a co-packer supplying you has likely caused. Then it's a completely different approach from the brand. If it's quality, I would talk through it just to avoid or mitigate food waste. Is not something anyone should ever encourage.
Yeah.
If it's still sellable. And then, kind of the opinion piece is a different category that people just need to think through a little bit more and maybe make constructive suggestions for the next run.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I think that there is that piece around, like, we give you, we work through a process as a co-packer, like shape or size or something like that is a great example. And
yeah.
And then, but then the whole point of a co-packer is to become more efficient, to mechanize things, right? And have machinery, things that are we're going to remove some of those pieces around the little handcrafted feeling.
Yeah.
So that we can get our cost of goods sold down and compete and make a whole lot of product in a short period of time. So
yeah, that's right. And I think the best way we find that is to always go into your expectation of what the product spec is with a range. So it might be a 70 to 75 millimeter circle, because it doesn't matter how good you are of a baker. If you're labeling something as small batch or artisan or maybe one step above handcrafted, then you want some of that fluidity. You don't want it to look like a cookie cutter cookie every single time, because it takes a lot of the personality out of your product. But ranges are always a good idea when it comes to quality specifications. Again, I'm not referencing food safety in that, but a range of light to dark, maybe providing your co-packer with an acceptable color chart for a baked good, or deciding it's not just you can go up to whatever size fits in the package. If you say something like that to a co-packer, they will do exactly what you said. But maybe, the allowance of 5-10 millimeters isn't really going to change product cost or product integrity.
Yeah. And if you want some of those extra hand touches and things, then they're potentially available, but they will cost you more, right? Because every time you have to touch the product more, then there's an additional cost. So keeping that in mind as well. Well, thank you. That's really helpful. I think so good for people to know. So what else should we definitely touch on here that would be really helpful for people if they're thinking about moving into co-packing?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's a particular passion of mine, and you already know this, I touched on it a couple of times in the conversation, is what are we doing with imperfect product, kind of back to that quality versus opinion standard is, have you really thought about if you've developed a product, let's say that has trim, meaning you lay it out in flat sheet dough and then you're cutting off the edges. What are we doing with the edges? Because we as an industry, as a community, need to stop wasting. So can you develop a product off of that? A couple of examples I'll give you is, turning broken food into some sort of crumb topping, or maybe it's if we are manufacturing breads and we didn't get exactly the right proof, or the slicer broke down, can we turn that product into croutons and maybe expand the brand's profile, instead of just determining it as animal feed or waste, meaning the trash right away. Again, we do need to be supplying some of the farmers with their animal feed, but if it's good and viable product, is there something that we can do to really upcycle it, and maybe, like I said, end up with a product developed for the brand that they maybe didn't think about. So I always ask my brands within the first couple times we meet if it seems like we're going towards that, to evaluate that and think about it for themselves. Otherwise, I'm going to come to you with 3 or 4 suggestions on what I'd like done with it, because I do think that that's the next thing. In air quotes, I guess, is we've gone through this process of food safety auditing. You can't get into a major retailer at this point without being a GFSI or an SQF plant. The thing right after that was social responsibility, and maybe you and I are going to know each other for years, so you can come back and comment on this to me in a little bit. But I do believe that food waste initiatives are going to be the next requirement to kind of offset some of these problems we're having.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you even think about that. I have a couple clients. She made some bread that was underproofed, or she did something to it, and she ended up turning into croutons, and it was right around Thanksgiving. Yeah. And so it was a great use of that. But I think that's really, really great that you're even thinking about that. I don't hear that very often. Yeah. So I love it. And how much time should people plan on kind of this onboarding process? Does it usually take? Because I think there's always this urgency, like, now I gotta go. Like, how much runway?
Yeah.
I never do that to you, right?
No. I think that, if I were putting myself in their shoes, kind of what should my expectations be? It really depends on how ready you are, right? So if you're coming to me with a index card that has a recipe written on it, your onboarding process is going to take a much longer time versus the brand that's already, has their labels developed, has their formulas finalized, and just to touch briefly, formulas and recipes are 2 very different things, meaning it's been commercialized or scaled to a point. Maybe those are the companies that are transitioning. But from a small scale, you should anticipate anywhere from 3 to 6 months of a process if you really want to do it right, and you're just whether it's still an idea or just a small scale product that you've been kind of hoping to expand. That's probably the right timeline.
Yeah.
As far as an expectation. That being said, if you are in a pinch and you run across a situation where, oh, my shared kitchen or my commissary just shut down all of a sudden and I have nowhere to go, there are co-packers out there, if they're good at what they're doing, that can help folks pretty immediately. But you have to understand that your bad situation is not necessarily our bad situation. And we want to do what we can to help, but you have to be patient with the process. And kind of, as soon as they say they need something, you need to come up with it. And then if they maybe go dark for a few days, sit back and tell yourself that's because they're trying to get all their other products off the line so that they can help me. Be patient. Be patient is one thing, that it's your company and it's your brand, and we get it as co-packers that it's the most important to you. But unfortunately, when you join the co-packing community, the other thing you have to keep in mind is everyone's brand is the most important. Yes. and good co-packers usually have multiple most importance to deal with.
Yeah. You're juggling a lot of other products.
Yeah.
Which actually I was going to ask you too, like, how far in advance are you scheduling out production runs? Like, should people be planning on like letting you know like 4 weeks in advance, 8 weeks in advance before you can get them in, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of how AVA has found this solution. And I'm not giving up any secrets that people can't think of on their own. But what we have done is if you're going to be one of the smaller volumes to start before you've had that opportunity to get product out there and grow, 4 weeks is an appropriate lead time.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're going to go with a tolling model and your lead time is 4 weeks, the one thing you should change in your mentality is that those ingredients should be there 2 weeks well in advance of when they're planning to run. Because if they are not there by that 4 week lead time, unfortunately, you're going to get bumped off the schedule. And it's not really reasonable to say, I know all of my ingredients are late, but I need to be back on the schedule ASAP. I think that is ASAP has become a funny term at AVA, because if you're going to say as soon as possible, then that really means you're giving me the liberty to do it as soon as I possibly can. And that may be 6 weeks from now. But be more specific with what you're looking for, but then accepting of what is actually possible.
Yeah.
If it's a brand that's, further along in the process, labels ready, things of that nature, I would say 21 days is probably pushing it, depending on what kind of distribution paperwork or packaging has to be ordered, but it can be done.
Yeah. Well, and that's something I learned with another project is ingredient lead times can be, especially the flavor extracts or some of the more, commercial ingredients, depending on what it is, can take a long time. I think ours took 6 weeks and we had to reschedule a couple times. Like, I did not expect that to take so long to get here. So yeah, something to be aware of. Yeah, definitely planning well in advance. So, all right, this has been so good. So, what are some of your last pieces of advice for folks looking into moving into a co-packing situation?
I think that one piece of advice I can give is that, a lot of people need to be able to stay calm, whether it's a food safety, a quality, a raw material shortage issue. There is no advantage to overreacting. And there's no reason to ever, and I say this for all of us, yell at your co-packer. It's not going to get you very far, especially not here at AVA. So, I think that like any business, when you're starting out, it's easy to see it as, we've compared it to the likeness of marriage. I've compared myself as a small business owner of this being my second child. So we get it. We hear the passion behind what the need is. But, in any other relationship, unless we're going to be calm and work through it together, it's not going to work for anyone. I think the only other thing, more life in general, is to just continue to be kind. I expect you to be kind to me, and I will be kind to you. But beyond that, if you're going to be with an organization like AVA, you also need to be as kind to the crew that's working there, because those are the folks, again, that are making it happen for your company.
Yeah. I love how many countries do you have represented by your employees? I love your flags at the...
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, there are 7 countries represented across my crew. Yeah.
Yeah. Such a great staff. It's been a lot of fun getting to know them. They're very, very welcoming.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will definitely put your website link in the show notes, and people can contact you if they want to check in with you and find out about if it would be a good fit, if they have a product that would meet the quality, the specifications that you do. You're also certified kosher, right?
Yes. Yes. So AVA is an organic, kosher, and gluten-free facility.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that you did those certifications. I know a lot of people are looking for those things. So it's really great. Can we just like replicate you and put you in multiple other products? We need a USDA facility just like this.
Yeah. I think let me get my bakery under control and trained off to some of my best, and then we'll go on
There we
to the next
go.
one.
We'll add USDA and then check with us in a couple of years. I will support that 100%. All right. Okay. Well, thanks, Andrea. I really appreciate you being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wow. Andrea gave us so much good stuff in this. I hope you found that really helpful. And I know not everybody is going to be able to find a plant like AVA, she certainly doesn't do all the products. I wish she did. But hopefully this gives you some great things to think about. And as you're going into creating a relationship with a co-packer, that you have some more tools and some more, you're just more aware and more educated about what it means to work with a co-packer. I will also put the links for the co-packing videos that I have done on YouTube that I think are also really helpful, that go over some more of the pros and cons and things you're looking for when you decide, if you decide to go into co-packing. And until next time, have an amazing week. Are you ready to start that delicious idea that you make in your home kitchen or grow your existing packaged food business and take it to the next level? The most successful food business entrepreneurs have support, guidance, focus, and accountability to help them make it happen quickly without wasting time or money. Plus, I think starting your packaged food business should actually be fun. Food business success is your secret ingredient to creating your food business dream. Please don't go this alone. Check out the private free Food Business Success Facebook group to connect with other foodpreneurs, get your questions answered quickly, share your wins, and receive special training and tools I only share inside the private community. Just search for Food Business Success on Facebook or get the link in the show notes. Curious about how Food Business Success can help you? Head over to foodbizsuccess.com and fill out the application to see if you're a great fit for the program. Together, let's make your food business dream a reality.